Hey guys, welcome back to the Bro and a Pro podcast, where we hope to help you reach your full potential, whether that be inside or outside the gym. I'm your main host, Jeremy So, self-proclaimed gym bro, and I am joined today with my co-host, the Nicole Tan IFBB Pro.
It's been a long time, guys. I am so glad to be back.
Welcome back. It's been a while, but I think we are going to try to plan to do more of these. I think some people might like to listen to us have a yarn. So we're going to have some fun today. So today we are going to talk a little bit about, I guess, your prep. How did it go with the results? Obviously competing internationally and stuff like that. How your body responded to a whole bunch of different things. And how you're going with the reverse diet that we are currently doing.
There's so much to talk about. Where should we even start? Should we start with off-season or should we start like from the prep?
We probably start with the prep itself, like how the plan was and how you went and how early you came in and stuff like that.
Yeah. I just want to preface it by saying even though I properly started my prep on like literally the 1st of July when we came back, I was actually doing a little bit of a mini cut since April. So I've actually been kind of in a fat loss-ish phase per se from April all the way to when I competed in October. So this is the importance of actually prepping for a long time or giving yourself enough time to actually lose body fat. So when I actually started prep, even though I had a lot of things going on like a wedding and we were traveling and things like that before I actually started prep, my body fat was obviously much lower than it was in the deep off season because I already started kind of like a little bit of a mini cut in a pre-prep phase. And so basically during the prep, it was really hard initially. We're not really straight off the bat. So I think I started off pretty okay, but my body's really slow and stubborn. So even though my body is slow and stubborn, I think the lucky thing is that like I didn't have actually that much fat to lose because I stayed in relatively good shape in the off season. Plus I did a mini cut prior to beginning the prep phase. So even though things were moving really slowly, it wasn't very stressful at all on me because I was feeling like I was looking better each week. I was like getting leaner slowly, but I knew that I was definitely like still going to make it. And then we kind of hit a halfway point where things were starting to just kind of plateau out a little bit, which is very, very common with my body. And that's when we started pushing a little bit harder. And sometimes when we start to push harder, my body starts to push back. So when we started to go a little bit harder with the cardio and drop the calories a little bit more, my body did resist a little bit initially. But then we kept pushing through and made some progress and then took some steps back and then made some progress and took some steps back. Again, that's very natural of my body because I do have a regular female cycle. So anytime I'm in my mid-cycle, so in the ovulation phase, as well as just before my period, I do get many days of weight fluctuations where the weight does go up a fair bit and it's usually concerning and it's usually a little bit stressful, even though I know the exact reasons why this is happening. Obviously it still plays on me a little bit mentally. So those weeks were hard, but obviously again, once I get back into, post period and stuff, then things start moving along. So it wasn't a smooth sailing road where I made progress every single week. It went up and down. But by the time I think 5 weeks out came, I pretty much felt ready and confident, and I definitely was ahead of schedule. I don't know what you think, but I felt very much ahead of schedule by the time 5 weeks out came.
Yeah, I think we started off really, really well. I think the first step was we obviously had our wedding. So we started just before our wedding, which obviously was like a side curveball, but you started cleaning things up, tracking things, and we just got you eating more food at the very beginning. I do remember your weight climbing after you kind of started, and then when we started together, I was like, oh, let's try to eat a bit more and see how your body goes. And then you gained a bit of weight, had our wedding, and then we came back. I think we only had 2 weeks, and then we had to go off for your cousin's wedding, which is obviously something that we couldn't be 100% in. Obviously, we tried to train and stuff, but I think we were kind of preparing the body for when the cut actually came. So I think we primed really well. We went to the cut, and then the goal was for me, like as a coach, I wanted you to come in earlier just so that way we could play around with more like, diet breaks, carb ups, that sort of stuff to kind of help kind of slow down the process down a little bit. But to our surprise, I think I truly believe that it's less stressful if you come in a bit earlier compared to coming in just on time. Because I feel like when you come in just on time, you don't have time to kind of play around with carb ups and stuff like that. But that being said, you also have to manage your muscle level and not lose that amount of muscle that you want to lose as well. Because obviously you're trying to maintain muscle, but then if you start to eat into your muscles and then you start to look flat and stringy, and that happens a lot. Like you see a lot of times when I see competitors, do like 3-4 shows back to back, and they just start to wither away, and you can really see it in their physique. Because I think what people don't get is that when you're training, you're not actually training in the last week as intense as you normally would. And so because you're trying to reduce inflammation and water, so in that aspect, let's say if you do 4 weeks of back-to-back shows, you're not really training for a whole month. So like you're just trying to maintain, but your body just needs that time. So I think planning the show was super important. Obviously we had 2 shows that we were gunning for, so it was manageable. But at the same time, we also had to consider like travel and stuff. But at that 5-week mark out, we were pretty much, I would say, ready. And obviously in the best spot that we could possibly be in, to then obviously implement, like, I think we had a whole week of like almost high carb days where it was just like, it was almost like a diet break for a week, just to kind of give the body a break. And then we pull cardio out at 5 weeks out as well.
Yeah, so pretty much for my body, I think the cardio drop was the best thing ever. So unfortunately for my body, when you start implementing more cardio, I have to start doing a lot. So I was pretty much maxed at 6 days a week of 50 minutes of cardio, which honestly is not the most cardio
50?
I've done. 50, yeah.
50,
so I didn't get up to an hour, but in the past I've done an hour every day. So that's very normal for me and my body. But yeah, I was pushing hard at 5 days a week of the 50 minutes of cardio, really struggling there. And the progress from that was not a lot considering the amount of effort that went in. And then usually it's very common for just us as coaches to taper back on cardio. But for me and you, we went straight to just cutting all 6 sessions altogether down to 0. And then from there, surprisingly, my body just started tightening up heaps. So I think it's really weird. It's a really weird thing. And usually, like I said, I was a little bit scared initially because I thought maybe we would slowly taper it down just to see what happens. But I think because we were ready early, we were confident enough to just drop everything out and just kind of, see what happens. And fortunately for my body, it worked really well. Just gave me more energy to sleep, to recover, to train harder. And I think you trusted me to know that like I will use that extra energy well. And if I don't do as much cardio, I'll make sure that like my training is 100% on point. If I'm feeling good, I'm going to be pushing harder, and I'm going to obviously make sure that I get all the recovery that I need, and try my best to sleep as much as I can. I think even though my sleep was impacted, this is the best I've slept through all my preps. I didn't end up waking up at like 4 a.m., 3 a.m., stuff like that, which I would have in the past. So I think just by reducing that stress without the cardio, my body naturally continued to tighten up really, really well. And then obviously we hit a stage where I was pretty much very ready, and my body would have like sharp drops like from time to time, and then we just have to recarb back up. And then with my body, even though it's hard to get lean, once I'm lean, it's very easy for me to flatten out and very hard for me to carb up properly, which is obviously, I guess, a little bit stressful for you as a coach to deal with.
Yeah, I would say it was a bit hard, especially with the carb ups and stuff. Especially, I guess it was only towards the end of prep that it really became harder to predict because the body would just respond really well. But at the same time, you always trained really hard, which is super important. But, obviously you're more elite, and, doing like 2 sets per exercise was pretty much the goal, with only like 5 to 6 exercises max, like I think that we did. But obviously you're more advanced, and, obviously most people want to work up to that level, but getting that quality and that intensity, a lot of people need time to kind of get there. So I guess like, when you hit all the variables right, it becomes a lot easier. Traveling obviously is another issue. I think it's something that even we learned now, that maybe coming in like going to the country 5 days earlier would probably be a better, safer choice than flying in 3 days out, because obviously like delays and food packed and different country, different weather, just all those options. And it could be decreased stress as well, maybe higher NEAT because you're moving around more compared to what you would be doing when you're at home. So I think that's one thing that a lot of people have to consider when they are doing a different state coach show or international show. Interstate's not too bad, but I think internationally, I think it's very important that you go to the show early and prepare earlier. because your body obviously started losing weight even though we're carbing up, but then in the night we were like, how have you lost weight after all these carbs? And I think we got up to like 400 grams of carbs like in
300.
Oh, 300.
Not that crazy, 300.
Oh yeah,
300 is a
300.
lot for me. Yeah.
Yeah, 300 is heaps for Nicole.
Yeah.
So 300 plus, like, yeah, it was just a lot.
Yeah, it was definitely a lot of carbs. And also, I guess, I want to be able to enjoy this whole process as well. And part of that is, obviously picking countries to compete at that we've never been to. So, we could just stay in the hotel all day, every day and just be like, I don't want to change things. I don't want to do more steps than I usually do. But at the end of the day, I made the choice to I want to explore and enjoy Korea. That may mean that sometimes, the steps will go up to 16,000 or whatever it may be. And, but, it was totally fine because obviously we did account for that. And I think that's the best thing about obviously having you prep me, being someone who was there with me, or also if I were to prep myself, just being able to make these decisions on the go for us, knowing that I'm definitely burning more calories, we definitely need to eat more, and also just being a little bit flexible with certain food choices. Obviously, I eat really, really clean and organic and all that kind of stuff all leading up. But I was more than happy to carb up on what I needed to, going to the convenience store, getting the packet rice from Korea. It was the most delicious thing I've ever had, honestly. I was really happy to eat that. But I think, obviously if I had a different coach, it would be really hard and it would probably give me a bit of anxiety to eat things that were not what I would usually eat. I even just had sweet potato from the 7-Eleven and things like that, which obviously would not be 100% on point when it came to tracking these things. It's not the usual foods I would usually eat. But we made do, and I think the way I was able to just manage the macros around it and just know that even though it's not 100%, that just to feel okay with it. I felt really okay and good eating the foods that I am a little bit reluctant to eat usually. Like I said, I'm very, very controlling. I want to be able to cook and prepare all the foods myself. I'm very just suspicious of anything that I especially buy from a convenience store. But when you travel, you have to make these decisions sometimes, and you have to just kind of go with it and be chill and okay with it. I think is the most important thing to remember about traveling internationally. We will always have different cuts of meats and different things all over the world. It's a very eye-opening experience, and that if you want to compete internationally, you have to have an open mind about these things, and it really helps to be ready early. And that's when you're ready early, then you are more confident to be able to do these things. Whereas if you were not ready, then obviously it's much more scarier eating food items that you're not used to eating.
Yeah, I think, traveling internationally is obviously a different ball game. So it's only for the experienced competitors, I would say. A lot of times, obviously, we have clients do interstate, which isn't too bad because Australia is Australia. So I think that's more manageable compared to flying to a different country where everything's so different, right? You have to be careful of everything, but flying with your coach obviously makes a lot of sense. We can look at a lot of different things and be like, yeah, that's fine. Just have convenience store sweet potato, which is about right, So we just estimated, but we kind of knew what we were doing, and I could look at your physique a lot more often. It's that communication that's super important. That is key to kind of getting the best results and looking the best you can, and obviously carbon up well and stuff. But coming in early will make things a lot easier. I think a lot of times people will struggle with this when they go on holiday. They think they can just relax and enjoy food, and I'm like, well, no, you're still in prep. You have to stick to the plan. So even when we're in Korea earlier, you just watch me eat while you obviously just kept eating your meals. And I think that's important. Obviously managing your fatigue levels, making sure that we rested when we needed to, which is, I think, important that people do forget. I think when they go on holiday, they're like, I want to enjoy food because, when you fly somewhere, the holiday starts. But for us, it's always like we're staying on top of, obviously, your nutrition and your food and your training. It's like, what can you do to prepare to do all of those things, which I think is good.
Yeah, so in Korea, I was pretty much having to stay on track for a full 6 days. 6 days I've endured watching you eat all the amazing foods, but it was honestly so easy to just stay on track, and I was never happier. I was so happy every single day I was in Korea. I enjoyed myself so much. This the part of not being able to eat what I want was so minuscule. I feel like I managed to execute prep perfectly whilst also enjoying and exploring Korea to the best that I can. I got you to try a lot of foods that I thought I wanted to eat. And honestly, after you tried it and you kind of like, seeing you eat it and just being there, me smelling it and stuff like that, like I also I feel like I've lived through it as well. Sometimes I just want to do things for the gram as well in my vlogs. So I think being able to just like see you eat it, like me take photos of the food, and because I enjoy foods in more than one way, it's more than just like tasting it. I like being able to like look at it, smell it, take photos of it, make little reels, whatever it may be, share it with the world, show everyone what Korea has to offer in terms of like food and things like that. I didn't feel the need to eat absolutely everything when I was off prep over there. Obviously, I tried to fit in as much as I could eat in like 2.5 days, but there was a lot of things that I thought I would go back and try that I didn't. And there was a few things I got you to try for me and you told me it wasn't actually that nice, and so I didn't really feel like I really missed out. I'm like, oh well, luckily I got Jeremy to eat it, so like I didn't have to, and it was not as nice as what I thought it would be. I think one of the things was actually that little s'more thing. Remember the s'more thing? It looked so cool because it was like a ice cream covered with s'more on the fire and all that. It looked cool, but yeah, just seeing how underwhelmed Jeremy was when he ate it, I was like, you know what, maybe I don't have to try, I don't have to eat it. So yeah, it was easy to just kind of not go back for it after, so that's a good thing.
I think what's one thing also that we see is that you're a professional athlete, right? So I think you execute prep like a champion. If anyone that knows Nicole knows that she does not really display how tired or hungry she is. Like she might a little bit, but you will never see her affected. Like we go out to eat, she'll be like, oh my God, like stop eating that in front of me. Or like, oh, you can't do that. Well, I can't do it. And I think that really differentiates between like the people who are going to go very far in the sport and the people who aren't, because I think that's such an important thing that you need to be able to have that champion mindset, because this is the choice you made for yourself. I know we have talked about this in the past for sure, but I think I just want to reiterate the point, because I think a lot of times people like, execute prep not like a champion. They just almost treat it like, oh, like, you can't do that if I'm doing this. Like you almost put yourself, not to be fair, you might put yourself on a pedestal that's like, I'm better than everyone else because I prep and I do this. And I'm like, you're just a competitor. Like to be real, like, and that idea that no one's making you do it, like it's your own choice. So you acting high and mighty, I think it's such a big pitfall that people need to not do, or remember not to do when they prep next time. That's what truly makes a champion. Someone who is able to execute prep but still live their life, still pack their meals, go to events, go to occasions, and not let it affect the mood and the people around you just because you're dieting or I'm tired and I have to do cardio. And it's your choice, and I think that's one thing I want people to kind of take away from, especially from seeing how you prep. If anyone, I'm sure there's a lot of people here that do watch Nicole's YouTube, so you can see how she executes it like without much moodiness, which is, it's fine to be moody, because there are days you are moody, but like it's never that bad. Like a lot of times your friends, the people around you know that you execute it so well that you don't even notice. Like you're like, oh shit, how are you in prep still? Like people are shocked to hear like, are you prepping? Like what? Why are you so happy and smiling all the time? Because that's what truly makes a champion. That's what truly makes you an elite athlete. And this is something that as coaches we see. We can see people who can do it as part of their lifestyle. To be fair, a lot of times people who are probably listening to this probably only have done 1 or 2 shows. So you haven't done many. Nicole obviously has done now 17, 18 shows. So it's a lot of shows to have done in the last 10 years. So obviously the experience, and the more experienced you become, the more normal it becomes, because I think you know what to expect. And I think that's where it is also important to know how your prep is as a coach. Like when people cut and change coaches, how it happens all the time, and especially like, it could happen like 2 weeks out from a show. And I'm like, that's so risky. Like as a coach, I'll be like, oh my God, like you need to finish off with your last coach before we even consider taking on someone that's 2 weeks out. I'm like, that's just unreal. Like it does. I can't fathom that sometimes, because I'm like, well, there's so many things we have to consider and variables that we're like, we don't know what you have been doing. So the game plan isn't done yet until it's done. So recommendation, stick to the plan and trust your coach all the way through. And then after, if you want to change, go ahead and change, but just stick to it to the end at least.
Yeah, definitely. I think even now, I know you always kind of, you know, tell me that like, oh, you can always just hire like whoever you want and things like that. But I just kind of feel even just with one short prep, and we already know so many things that we can do and improve for next time, and like certain things that we did, and we can just like, you know, change things. I think if I had to restart all over again with someone new, would still be like really hard to do, even though they will have a lot of time to like kind of learn my body. I still feel like even like, you know, one season with a coach is not enough, because they may want to try something different again the following time. So it's still, you know, as much as we did 2 shows and all that kind of stuff, it's still, I still think like if we did do another show that like we could do better with the information and experience and stuff that we now have. I think there's always room, you know, for us to improve. And sometimes people, like I said, jump ship too early, and you just don't know yet. You just need to give yourself enough time with whoever you're working with and trust it. Obviously trusting that you did pick the right person. So obviously with some people, if you just know in your gut that it's not the right person, that's fair enough. But don't kind of write people off too early, I think, even if you didn't place like the way you want to, because a placing is like so little. So should we talk about placings? I don't know if people know how well or bad I did.
No, I think it would be good to talk about placing, because I don't think everyone might not know, but it would be good to reiterate what the placings were.
And like, I guess, feedback and things like that. So, well, basically leading into Vietnam, first of all, I was 1.2 kilos up from my pro debut weight, and about...
That was a year ago as well.
Yeah, so I only pro debuted last year. And I also was the same weight when I went to America for the first time and stood in front of American judges. So I was about 42 kilos when I was in Pittsburgh. It was the biggest show I've ever did. I got feedback from Olympian judges. Again, I didn't do very well over there, but they all really liked me and my shape and everything that I brought, and they really wanted me to bring more size. They're like, we just want to see more of you. And so 1 year later in Vietnam, obviously, even though it was in Asia, I still got a chance to stand in front of, again, another Olympian judge, but again with a whole different pool of competitors, but they are not to be underestimated at all. These girls from Asia, let me tell you, especially the girls from China, they are on another level. They are so insane. They have so much size, and they're all amazing, but we will get to that. But I think the first thing that, you know, I was happy with, that when I woke up on show day, was that I executed what they wanted me to do. I brought pretty much, you know, the same classic shape of mine, but with 1.2 kilos extra of muscle, and I would say even leaner. I was leaner than what I was at the Pittsburgh. So in 1 year I was leaner and 1.2 kilos heavier, which means I probably did put on a good maybe 1.3, 1.4, maybe even 1.5 kilos of lean muscle mass. So that was the main goal, and I was very, very happy with that result, which in itself is a win. This was even before the show and everything. Obviously backstage pumping up, like the whole day, everything was going like really, really well. But the moment I kind of stepped on stage, and I'm usually the last one to go on because my last name is T, so I could see everyone kind of step on there with the stage lights and everything, and I could just see the density on them. And I stepped on stage, and I could see Jeremy from the stage as well, and I could tell that like he also knew. I think we both knew that, not that I didn't look good, not that I didn't bring anything good, but that these girls were just so damn good. And obviously I was away from the stage for a while and didn't know obviously how people looked apart from Instagram, and Instagram is so deceiving. I think a lot of people from my Instagram think I'm so much bigger than I am in real life. I think I get that comment a lot. They think I'm much taller and much bigger than I actually am, but I'm really, really tiny in real life. So yeah, the competition there was really, really rough. Obviously, I didn't get the call out or placing that I want. I was basically like in the last call outs, and it was super disappointing. And I don't know. What do you have to say about the Vietnam show?
Yeah, the girls are on a different level. But what I like about that, it's a show run by Tamer Grundy, is it? Yeah. And he's the creator of the Olympia. So not creator, but like he runs he actually runs the Olympia as well. So he's also one of the head judges. So he knows what he's doing. So when he was doing the lineups for like the amateurs were on a whole different level as well. Let me just be the first to say that the amount of amateurs that was such a high quality, I was like, holy crap. Like these guys, especially the guys, like the men's physique guys, they were just like on a whole different like size game. Like it was crazy to see like 20 of them backstage and all of them were just jacked. Like they would literally easily clean up in Australia if they came here. Like they were just like, our best guy here would be like 10 of them or 20 of them at least. And some of these guys were tall and jacked, short and jacked. They were just everything. I was just impressed. And I'm always impressed by this level of athlete that, like, you know, around the world, you know, you may be potentially a big fish in a small pond here in Australia, but when you go overseas, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, these guys are pretty big. Like, just to be fair, our really good guys are good. Like, they generally do well overseas, but like, generally speaking, I would say, like, you know, the amateur level, like the average amateur level is such a high level. And obviously then you got the bikini girls, and the girl who won was also really good. I think she was a Thai girl. And Tamer judges so quickly and so good. Like, it's so fast. Like, they do choose a few things, and that's the experience we've kind of gained from every show. And I think, you know, I enjoy watching all these shows. I think a lot of people don't see how much detail I look into these shows. I watch IFBB, I watch, you know, in person, and I've seen it internationally. I also watch like a lot of the ICN shows. Like, I literally just sit there and just watch it all. Like, I watch all the divisions and how they judge it, and everything's so different everywhere. So I think this misconception is like this certain look is good for this show and it might not be good for a different show, and so that changes the game plan completely. But talking about, I guess, going back to the pro lineup, the girls were phenomenal. They were a ton of muscle. If they were here, most likely probably would have got marked down for being too big and too conditioned. And I think that's why, you know, that's something that can be improved on. But I think each show they do pick the right winners and stuff. But I think it can be a lot easier. I think they're looking to it too much, that if they knew the standard around the world, these are pros. Like, you know, you've got to have a pro physique, which is worthy of being a pro and stepping on a pro level straight away. That's pretty much it. Generally, it could just be a muscle thing, and the same thing with the girl who won a pro card. Out of 20 girls, she was in the last call-outs as well, and she obviously just needed more muscle, but she had the shape and the conditioning of what was required, and so she pretty much beat all the amateurs. But when she went to the pro lineup, it's not like she put it straight away in the first call-out, because they're like, well, you need more muscle, and it's just like a little bit more. But then it's the same idea. I think you've improved, but it's also that same idea that we just need to keep improving that little bit extra. And I think it's not a bad thing. I think it's good to see this in person, because that's what when you turn pro, you're almost like a beginner again. So it's just like the same case of just improving, and as long as you keep improving, you'll get there eventually, right? Like, there's no way that you're not going to get there if you keep improving show to show, and it depends who rocks up on the day. So the feedback, obviously we didn't get any from Vietnam, but we did get some from Korea, which was good. So you can talk about Korea if you want.
Just quickly going back to the Vietnam lineup again, I just want to say that there was a lot of Olympians that were there. So they all did pretty well. The Olympia, they all look phenomenal. The girls that like competed with me in Vietnam and then went over to do the Olympia, congrats to all of them. They look really, really good. Since then, there was 2 other Asia shows where both the winners from both those Asia shows did compete in Vietnam as well. So the lineup in Vietnam, like I said, was absolutely phenomenal. I think everyone there was absolutely very, 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 very well conditioned. So it wasn't even like a, you know, a conditioning. Everyone was conditioned, you know. So
let me just mention though, like it's crazy because, you know, we talk about striated glutes and bikini girls can't have striated glutes. You would not know the amount of striated glutes you see on a bikini pro lineup. It's just once you put the tan on and you jump on stage, people don't see it because the way you guys pose and stuff. But between transitions and when I was looking backstage, I was like, these girls all have peeled glutes. Like, because when they were pumping up, I could literally see their glutes like straighten and everything like that. But when they jump on stage, with the way they pose, you don't really notice it as much. But their conditioning was definitely on par, like with what you should have brought. And I think, you know, a lot of times, you know, you get told here, oh no, you can't have straighted glutes. But I'm like, have you not seen these pros? Like, they actually backstage, I've seen them, and I'm like, they have straighted glutes and straighted shoulders. Like, it's crazy. But once you put that tan on, obviously you carb up well, you do the right things, you can kind of get the illusion that you don't, but all of them are in top knit condition.
And like, I didn't really want to also tell anyone before a show, but like, so my delt striate pretty much from like 10 weeks out. Around 4 weeks out, I had striations in my glutes. One day out, Jeremy has this crazy video of my quads. My quads had insane striations like I've never seen before. And it was a little bit of a worry to me, but I'm so glad now that like I get to see exactly how lean everyone is. And so like, you know, next time I know like I don't have to worry about that. It's such a small little thing that like got put into my head that I had to worry about when it really isn't.
Yeah, I think it's such a big thing here. It's like, oh, you can't have straight glutes, and I get that. I do get that. I think it's a good sign. But when you look at the IFBB pros and obviously the Olympians, you're like, yeah, these girls are straighted. I was standing backstage, I was watching them because I was literally standing there with all of them there pumping up. I'm like, man, these girls are freaking shredded.
Yeah, so we all were very, very well conditioned. Obviously, size was the number one thing that you needed to have in order to be like looked at. And then after that, they will like kind of like pick apart if you had certain muscle groups that were like too big, too small. And then it came down to flow, balance, all that kind of stuff. But I think because for me, so my feedback in Korea, again, 1 year later, it's the exact same feedback. I really was very appreciative of the judge. He really took his time to talk to me, Steve in Korea. So he also judges in America. So yeah, he pretty much told me everything is really good. They like everything about me. Like, you know, conditioning was good. And like, there's no body part that is overpowering over the other, but they just really needed more size on my frame everywhere. There was also a female judge that was there. She was like, yeah, you need more size everywhere, but I would like you to especially work on your lower body. And one of the other trial judges that we were kind of like friends with, she just gave me just like a non-official feedback as well from Singapore that he really wanted to see my glutes and legs much bigger. So in general, grow everywhere with a heavier emphasis on the lower body, I would say is the main thing I took away from my shows. I did also obviously overhear a lot of the feedback from the girls that got like first call outs in Korea, because obviously they all spoke Mandarin, so I was helping them translate a little bit. So some of them, you know, even though one of the girls got told like, you know, her shoulders were too big, too hard, or like someone else needed a little bit more conditioning, and someone else just needed to just not be as big, even though that was their feedback in like certain areas, they still made it into first call outs, as opposed to, even though my feedback was very good, but it's just lacking in size here, and everywhere. I think it's because it's the fact that I was lacking size in a lot of areas, every single area, that like obviously I couldn't be considered for the first call out. So even though I was balanced and conditioned and everything, because if you were to minus a mark for each muscle group that was undersized, I would have like minus like 10, 12 marks, as opposed to someone who perhaps had not big enough glutes. That's still only one area they have to work on. Or someone else who had their shoulders too big, that's still one area they have to work on. So I totally understand that, like, even though, you know, they still have these things that they need to work on, I have more that I need to work on. And that is why I ended up placing the way I did. I placed 8th out of 10 people. Honestly, that was a win for me after Vietnam, because honestly, I thought I was going to place dead last. So, and because there was only 10 girls, I did like really look, and like I went to follow like all of those girls, and they were really impressive. Like honestly, their structure, muscularity, again, conditioning, there was no one that was like out of shape at all. Everyone was lean. I was very, very impressed with every single person. So to even be able to place 8th out of 10, I walked away from that feeling pretty happy, because I did look up to, especially one of the girls that did place, I think 9th or 10th, because her structure was so incredible. I remember like I found her on Instagram even before competing with her, and I remember just saying how crazy her structure was, and they all have strengths that I aspire to be like I do love like at least one thing out of like every single competitor there. They all push me to want to be better. But yeah, I do have a lot to work on, and it's not something that I can change in a short period of time. I did ask Steve exactly how much muscle he thinks that I would have to put on. He did say 1 to 2 kilos. I'm glad he did give me a number. That may not sound like a lot to some people, but I promise you it is so much to put on 1 to 2 kilos, and it is a lot of hard work and a lot of time that needs to be put in. Jeremy personally feels like we need to put on 3, just to be on the safer side, and I agree as well. I think I'm aiming more for the 2 to 3 kilos of pure muscle, lean muscle mass, before even considering stepping on stage again?
Yeah, I think 2 to 3 is a good mark. And I think we have to look at like obviously the Olympians and stuff. And obviously we had one girl in mind that's the same height as you, and that's Ashlyn. If you guys do know her or not, she's phenomenal, and she does compete at 101 pounds, I think, which is
About 46 kilos.
which is 46 kilos on stage. And so we kind of made that estimate. You being 43.5, we were like, okay, you pretty much have to gain like 2.5 kilos, and you pretty much hopefully like it fills out and it does bring that similar look to what Ashlyn brings. And obviously, you know, Ashlyn did place 6 at the Olympia this year.
In the world, yeah, she did
Yeah,
really well.
so she did really, really well. So she's representing all the short girls out there, which I'm super happy with. She's
Maureen
phenomenal.
is short too.
Maureen is short as well. So I guess like, you know, we got to kind of play it on those cards. Like, you know, 2.5 kilos, obviously on your frame is a lot. And on a guy, that's 5 kilos of lean muscle tissue, which is not easy to put on. And it's going to be hard, especially when you're doing everything right as it is. Like, how do you put that muscle on? And I think what people need to remember is just time. Like, you know, what they envision to look like. I'm like, you know, you could do everything right, and it's just time. People just don't want to spend the time. They want to find some sort of easier route or some shortcut to be like, how do I get there now? And I'm like, well, you just need time. Like, it's no magic training formula. There's no magic nutrition formula. There's no magic protocol that's going to get you there like in 2 months, you know? And so I think a lot of times people just need to understand it's going to take time. And now we are looking to do a longer off season to give some time off, to give your body a break, and then that way to resensitize the body and obviously going through a growth phase.
Yeah, I guess I want to share also my true thoughts and feelings about this. This is an exclusive. I guess I rarely talk about it. But yeah, there was even now there is a part of me that is not sure if I will be even able to pull that off, or if whether I even want to step on stage again. I think the most motivating and the most disappointing thing sometimes that people have to kind of deal with is that like I look so different now with 1.3 kilos of muscle. I made so much progress. I worked so hard. I did everything right. Even to my friends that don't really like follow bodybuilding that like closely, or even my family and stuff, they just look at me as a regular human being walking around being so much bigger. Like they just look at me and they're just like, wow, you've like really gotten bigger. Just you know, just at rest. I'm not even posing or flexing or anything. But that was still nowhere near enough. Like I did so much, improved so much, and it was still not enough. And that is like something that is pretty much like a hard pill for anyone to swallow. I think sometimes maybe it might even have been easier for someone to be like, oh, like I didn't make the progress I needed to, and that's why I wasn't good enough. Maybe that would have been easier, like for someone to kind of like take on board. But it is really difficult to know that you have improved so much and yet you are still so far from where you need to be. So it almost makes it seem like, well, if I'm still so far, should I even still continue trying? Will I ever make it? Will there even be enough time for me to do this before like I aim to kind of retire? And, you know, obviously we all need to accept the fact that we're not going to be bodybuilding forever. There is a time limit. I am 31. And so I really needed to kind of decide whether like, do I still even really want to do this? And I think what kind of brought me back is when I came back and got back into routine, and every time I talk about prep, even just then, just talking about prep and how, I wouldn't say easy like it was for me, but how I'm so born to do this almost. It's like embedded in me. Just the fact that I remember, you know, when I walked into the gym like this one day, and then like, you know, the girls at the front desk were like, oh, Nicole, you're always so like happy. I can't even believe that you're like 2 weeks out. And these are the areas that kind of like show me that like I am built for this sport. Like it's more than just how fast I can build muscle, because that really gets me down. Like how slow I build muscle like really depresses me sometimes. But just the fact that like, you know, prep is not just about that, is about so much more, and how I'm able to still function as normal as I possibly can and still experience a lot of like that traveling aspect of prep. And I think the most important thing is that I love the process so much. I love like every single day. I love a lot of crazy things about prep that people won't even kind of like take into consideration. I know exactly how it feels to know when you're going like almost hypoglycemic, because I step off the Stairmaster and my body has burnt off every single carb that I have consumed, and like that is at that point tapping into my fat stores. I can feel it. It feels horrible, but I just know. And sometimes going to sleep at night and I'm just so hungry, but I know that tomorrow I'm going to have a new low weigh-in, like the crazy feelings like that. Or like, sometimes when I like wake up extra early, or like sometimes when I'm like carbing up and I can feel that like even though I'm carbing up, I still feel kind of like weak and like not like just that weak tired feeling when you're like carbing up in peak week. I love those little things. And more than that, obviously, like I love the training. So the good thing, when I tell people I have to grow everywhere, everyone's that's great, that's so much fun, and I'm like, yeah, it is so much fun, but it is a lot of like hard work as well. And it only gets demotivating when I think about the end goal, which is like to obviously place well and like to come back into the first call outs again. Because, people don't really think about this that much, but when you're all like fighting for your pro card and you're all like so depressed because you just like missed out on your pro card by like 1 point or like whatever it may be, you're still so used to being in first call outs. Like when you're like towards the end of your amateur career and you're like so close, like you don't even appreciate the fact that you come into first call outs. You don't even care. It's like, it doesn't even matter. But like, these are the things you miss when you turn pro. You're like, I just didn't really like appreciate the times where I was like in first call outs, really getting to battle for that spot and like getting moved around and things like that. These are the things we get so used to by the end of our amateur career. And then, turning pro and not being able to have that or like even come close is really, really tough, like to kind of go through. And obviously that's the only part, I guess, like that I hate the most about going back to compete is like, oh, what if I don't get that first call out? What if I don't get looked at the way I want to? Because, I was just, again, so outsized by other people. When I let these thoughts kind of creep into my head, it makes me not want to do it anymore. But every day when I wake up, it's second nature to like eat my meals and train hard. And honestly, I enjoy every moment of doing that. So at the moment, it doesn't change what I'm doing. I'm still trying to reverse the best I can. I'm still training to grow. I'm still training hard. And whether or not I compete, I love looking big. I love having more muscle, and I'm obsessed with the idea of building muscle. And so at the moment, it doesn't really change my day to day. And this is how I know it's like part of my lifestyle, because I'm like, I don't know whether I'll jump on stage, but I know that it's not going to change what I do day to day. I'm still going to live this way, eat my protein, have my pre-workout meal, my post-workout meal, take my pre-workout, take my greens, and train to failure. So that's where I'm currently at with regards to how I'm feeling.
And I think that's one thing to always remember, that, genetics plays such a huge role in obviously being the elite best in the world. And, one thing that is for certain though, there are so many people who aren't pros, who are probably still amateurs, and they've got crazy good genetics, but they just don't have that grit, that resilience, that mindset to actually push through and be the better person. Like, to execute prep as a champion, to see the long vision and long term. Because the amount of times we have worked with clients and we're like, oh my God, if this person had a stronger mindset, they would be unreal athlete, that they would just be like a force to be reckoned with. And I think, that's what is different with this sport. The great thing about this sport is that, if you give yourself time, you're eventually going to get there. But you've also got to be realistic in the idea that you might not necessarily, fit the category that you want to fit. So if it's like, you get like some girls who be like, I want to do wellness. And I'm like, well, you just need more time. Like, I don't know if we can develop to wellness. You have to just have that genetic structure already, like the bigger hips, slightly smaller waist, the bigger shoulders, the ability to build muscle. The ability to build muscle is a huge thing. And that could come down to a lot of lifestyle factors like sleep, stress, your body type, and, even your genetics, like your underlying potential to actually build muscle. So there's a lot of variables that come into play. And I think a lot of times people focus on, oh, I want to be like a wellness competitor. And I'm like, well, you have to build a ton of muscle, and it's going to take a lot of time. And, it might take 5 to 10 years. And I can't guarantee that you might even get there in the end, because you just might need more, like you might not have the necessary structure to do that. And so you've got to be realistic in your goals that you want to achieve. And obviously, I think, with the good thing is that you do have good genetics. Obviously, your ability to build muscle is probably a lot slower than the most general person. Obviously, we've seen amateurs who are like, shit, these people have so much muscle for like an amateur. And they've got that, also mindset, and all of a sudden they're just dominating everything, But I think it's one thing to always remember that you got to be realistic in your expectations and your ability to build muscle, and actually figure that out yourself, like of what you truly want to do. But don't set like unrealistic goals of, if you want to be like a pro bodybuilder Olympian, but you only have 60 kilos of muscle. I hate to break it to you, it might happen at some point, and I could be completely wrong. You can prove me wrong, but most times or not, it's not going to happen. You got to be realistic. It's the same idea. Like, I wouldn't want to push my body to its limit that I would put, like, I guess it's different for myself, because I would focus more on coach first, then be an athlete. And I think that's one thing that makes me a bit different to everyone else. Obviously, if I went all into athlete first, then I wouldn't be the best coach. But that being said, does not mean that you're not still going to be a good coach, because you do both. But at the same time, like, it takes a lot of effort and work to kind of take it to that next level.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I guess, with that being, so you're reversing by yourself. So obviously myself and Nicole, she did ask me this question about like post-comp, like what should I do? Like she asked me, should I reverse or like, recover, do the recovery diet? And in this moment in time, I'm not helping you do the reverse or recovery, because as a coach, wearing the coach's hat, I would say, yes, you have to do the recovery diet. So all my clients listening, yes, you have to do that. But because I am your husband hat as well, I wear that hat as well. So I want you to spend time with family, friends, and, make the most of the time that we do have and just enjoy our life. So that's why at this point in time, I am not helping you reverse, but obviously Nicole knows exactly what she's doing, and she's still going to be training hard. You're still going to be ticking all the boxes every single day, and then just do, because it's part of your lifestyle. And I think, eventually at some point you're going to make it to the stage again. I truly believe that we will get back to that stage, whether that be in 2 years, 2.5 years, might even be sooner rather than later. But I think, we're eventually going to get back there again as soon as you keep growing and focus on just enjoying that process. And I think you are truly enjoying your recovery at the moment, right?
Yeah, I think I'm going really, really well in my recovery phase. I like to call it a recovery phase. So basically, I think it's a bunch of different things. I think because we reduced fatigue so much prior. So just the fact that like I wasn't doing cardio at all for like 6 weeks, my body was able to really reduce that fatigue, and then combine with obviously we had 2 weeks of peak week where obviously we don't train to failure. So that is a huge rest on my body, because my body is so used to getting pushed so hard with training. And then obviously we carved up crazy way. So my body was consuming a lot of carbs during the peak week. So my body was used to that increased level of like food. And obviously my cortisol was super low because I was just having the best time ever in Korea. And so I was kind of set up for success, I think, by ending the prep really, really well. So I guess I have to give credit to you for obviously letting my body come into the show in such a relaxed state that really allowed it to almost recover almost instantly. My fatigue bucket, as you like to call it, was pretty much already like quarter empty by the time I even started my own recovery. So obviously from there, I have gained probably just like just about 3 kilos, I would like to say. We're like 4 weeks post show now. I'm really detached from the scale weight, the most detached I have been compared to my previous reverses. However, I still weigh myself every day, and I think these things are so important. The habits that you have, I still weigh myself. I still track my food. I give myself a macro window, so I don't have like set numbers for myself. I have like a goal number-ish, and probably I stick to it about 4 to 5 times a week, and I give myself 3 to 4 free meals a week as well to enjoy. I think the most important thing is I have certain rules that I set for myself, so I know what foods kind of like digest well with me, and you know that like I eat a lot and stuff like that, but then I will still be that person to be like, I'm not going to eat that fried thing over there because it's fried, So there's still little lines like that I would draw and try to kind of hold myself back from certain things that I know that don't sit well in my body. But then there's also times that I'll go YOLO. So obviously in Korea was when I really truly enjoyed myself. I had the fried stuff, I had the dairy, I had the gluten. I ate whatever I wanted. And I think because one of my goals through this recovery is to reduce my food focusedness. So I used to have a really bad binging problem in my last preps. I don't have that anymore. However, I spend a lot of my time maybe being a little bit too food focused, a little bit too excited about foods, like thinking about foods too much. And that's something I slowly want to get over. And I think through pre-planning and scheduling these meals out with people, I'm able to slowly get over that food focusedness. The other rule I set for myself is not overly snacking and indulging at home. I think maybe I got you to thank for that. We're really good with just not having junk in the house. So, if it's not there, we can't eat it. And so that is another thing. And I try to always make sure that if I want to really eat things, that I have to go out and eat it. You also have been really good at not wanting to accompany me to eat out like too much. So obviously when I'm at home, then the natural habits just kick in, and it's just about building those habits and behavior. So when I'm at home, we'll just eat what we usually would normally eat. Sometimes some days when I'm like a little bit hungry, I may go over a little bit, but like I said, we don't have anything overly bad at home. So that's been the easy part. But I think everything is just built through good habits and behaviors, as Jeremy would like to say, just living the regular bodybuilding lifestyle, and just focusing on a lot of different goals. So for me, my main goal was to get my period back. And in case anyone wants to know, I got my period back 3 days ago. Congratulations to me. I'm very happy with that. And very thankful for that as well. So really on the way to recovery. I think how do you know when you're like fully recovered is your hormones are slowly starting to get balanced. You're getting less and less hungry. So obviously I'm still hungry from day to day, but I don't really suffer with like extreme hunger anymore, which is good. Some days are better than others. So your leptin and ghrelin levels getting back to normal. I think I'm sleeping pretty well. Jeremy does hear me snore, so I guess I'm sleeping pretty deeply. So sleep is improving, bowel movements are improving. I'm absolutely killing it at the gym. Some days I'm still a little bit more tired than others, and I think my strength is not at its 110%, but the intensity of training is there. So overall, I'd like to say I'm almost like 90% recovered, especially with, again, like getting my period back and stuff. I think I'm feeling pretty good. My body's really happy. Obviously, it's really hard to accept the body fat gain visually, and that's always going to be a struggle with everyone. But I know that like internally, I'm feeling really good. And now that we are really in tune with our like health markers as well, I'm really ticking off all the health markers, which I'm really happy with. So I think overall it's going pretty good.
Yeah, I think you're executing it perfectly.
I wouldn't say perfect.
I think you're balancing out. I think, but because you're not too hard about like, oh my God, I just ate bad. And then you go into these rapid binge episodes of like, I ate bad, so I'm just going to scrap everything and stop training and stop ticking the boxes that I need to do. So I think that's a huge thing that people need to understand, that you're gonna regretting it is one thing, but then beating yourself up over it is another thing as well. So I think that's one thing that you have changed, and it's obviously a lot better now. It's more manageable. You're not gonna be like, oh my God, like visually I'm looking terrible. Like you're not gonna go through that depressed state, and you're not gonna regret it. And I think a lot of people, like, it's gonna, like, no one, like, it's very rare that someone's gonna execute reverse and the recovery well. Like, it's just as simple as it gets. No matter how badly they want to, there's not many people that do. And so it's one thing to, not beat yourself up over it and just take it on the next day. Don't let the day that you have ruined, lead into the next day, and get back on track. The ability to jump back on track and practice self-discipline, especially when you go out to eat, is a huge thing. It's making the right choices, they're making the right calls, and not be like, okay, I've eaten bad, so now I'm just gonna binge till I can't eat no more. So that's one thing that, obviously we both have improved on, and I think it's a mindset thing that you get more experience. As you do more shows, you get more experience at this. You're not gonna be perfect this time around, but I guarantee the next time you do this, you're gonna be prepared already that this is gonna happen. And your prep, next time you do prep, it's gonna be easier as well. You're going to know exactly how to improve the quality and make things better. That's how prep is. Obviously, we were pretty lucky. I want to talk, touch on a little bit about your prep, because I've seen you prep, and I've seen you prep many times with obviously your last coach and other coaches. So I have seen it all. So that's why it was easy for me to transition into coaching you. Obviously, when you, for example, when someone decides to go with another coach, you're starting it all again from scratch. Like, they're not going to know your body. They're going to have to implement their own protocols of what they normally use. And so the only reason why it worked so well this first time shot is because I already knew your body beforehand. I was like, okay, I know she comes in late, so we need to come in early. And so we just going to manage that. And that was probably the best call we could have made. So that way your conditioning was the best as ever was, and you could bring that fullness as well. And I think these are a few things. And obviously, like training intensity, I know you train hard and I know you have a high quality of training. I don't have to worry about your form or technique. So that's why it's totally fine. That being said, like your weight's very static. We did discuss that your weight becomes very, you start to push back. And so we already knew that. And I knew that you were executing perfectly. I knew you weren't closet eating and not telling me. But let's say if you were working with another coach and you're like, I promise you I'm 100%. It's still going to be like the coach, as a coach, I can say, yes, I kind of trust you, but your weight's pushing back. So I'm not exactly sure if you are sticking to it. Like, are we missing something? But obviously it's different with yourself, because I could see it firsthand that yes, she wasn't cheating. She was executing everything perfectly. Her sleep was good. Her water intake was good. Her steps, cardio, everything was hit perfectly, and it was still pushing back. So that's when, as a coach, we have to make those calls. And I think that's why the biggest problem is when you jump ships very soon, or like, any time, it's very hard for you to then, trust your coach to be like, okay, like this is happening to my body. But then we have to take your word that, okay, yeah, you're following the plan perfectly. And if you are obviously being honest, and there's been times where I prep people and I pull cardio out and they'll be like, oh my God, like you're pulling out cardio. I also need to do cardio all the way into prep. And I pull out and all of a sudden they start losing weight and they're like, what the fuck just happened? And I'm like, perfect. We're reducing stress. We're reducing workload. You're feeling better. And then all of a sudden you start losing that weight.
Yeah, I think because you know and trust that I did everything perfectly, and you know my body responds a lot to stress and inflammation. My body gets stressed and inflamed a lot. So I think you knew that like by dropping out cardio, that would 100% like be the right call to do for my body, because you know that like, oh, once Nicole is less stressed and less inflamed and less watery, like the weight's going to go down. And that's something we both know. I guess it's going to be a little bit more scarier for me if I had to make that call myself. But I think like you definitely was very confident to make that call. And I think a lot of things changed from there. Like I think from once we dropped the cardio out, it was almost just like, yeah, all the stress and inflammation was gone. And I think that was really where like things really started to ramp up really well.
Yeah, and then obviously implement the carb days and stuff, the high carb days and diet breaks, that just kind of helped to sweeten the pot. But I think it's one thing also, another thing that, is super important is as long as you improve show to show, you're going to eventually get there. And I think that's one thing I'm confident in saying, that, I can help clients. If you trust me to go show to show, I'm going to show you that we're going to make some improvements. And it may not be something fancy. People think it's going to be something fancy. And I'm like, you just need more time. Like your execution of how you execute the quality of your training, the way you execute your nutrition, the way you execute and tick the boxes every day, you're going to improve. And I think that's one thing to always remember. If you're going to show me a before and after and you show to show and you have not improved, it's as simple as that. There's no denying that you have not improved. And I think that's one thing that we can both be certain that, when clients work with us and stay with us long enough, they're going to see improvements no matter what. But it's always going to come down to the client executing the plan and how well they do things. Like, are you still recording videos to improve your quality of training? Are you hitting the right stimulating reps to actually promote growth? Are you also executing nutrition, without telling us, and that's where our clients do the best, which I think is really good.
I think also, what I'm going to be doing so-called different with like all these things I have to do is just absolutely nothing. Just it's more of the same. And people are so scared of doing the same thing and feeling bored. But honestly, when it comes to bodybuilding, especially when, things need time to happen, it's just day after day after day of doing the same thing. Like, how is this next year going to go different from the year prior? Not different at all. I'm going to do exactly the same thing. And a lot of my clients who are going to make the most progress as well, it's just like, we're just going to keep having to do exactly the same, but trying to be better each time. I think the only difference from what you're going to have to do is you just try to be better each time. Maybe either it be executing the movement better, lifting more weight, doing more reps, doing more sets. There's not going to be some crazy technique, crazy change in programming. There's not going to be some new thing that comes out, a new way of dieting. We're not going to really be doing anything different. We're just slowly going to build up calories. We're going to go through a building phase. Maybe once we get to a certain point, I'm going to just be doing a holding phase, which is literally more of the same. No change in calories, literally the same. Do the same thing. We're not aiming to really go into like a huge like bulk or like whatever it may be. Sometimes it's just like holding exactly where it is and just keep improving with the training. The only thing that's going to change is you train better, you train harder, you get stronger. Other than that, it's the boring things. It's the boring things that will make you better. And even like, Kobe and Michael, what they love to do, which may seem boring to other people, is just that those basic basketball drills. You get better at your craft by doing the same thing and doing the most basic, most boring things again and again and again every day. That's how you get better. And it's going to be boring. So don't try to think of something fancy or try to go to someone else. I think the worst thing is when people try to go to a different coach. I want to just see how they do something different. I want something different. And they think that the something different is going to be that magical thing that is going to magically propel them in a different direction. It's not going to be anything magically different. In order to be better, you just have to keep doing the basics, get better at doing the basics, and just not get bored with what you're doing. Because bodybuilding is just literally you eat your food, you train, you recover. That's it.
Do the basics freaking well, but that willingness to change and want to improve, that's where it comes to. Like, there's been so many times where I'll talk to clients, but like, you need to record me videos, and they just refuse to send me videos, almost like they're scared for me to nitpick it. And I'm like, you're just doing yourself a disservice. Like, to be fair and real, like, you're just doing yourself a disservice if you aren't trying to improve or learn more. And I think that willingness is that, yes, the basics are important. Like, do that bicep curl, but are you really planning your feet? Are you controlling the movement? Are you actually really thinking about improving? Because the ones that make the most progress are the ones that do the basics so freaking well that it's on a different level. Then you're gonna grow. You're gonna grow no matter what. Your body is just got no other choice but to keep growing as long as you keep keeping that intensity high. And it's then only then that some protocols can come into place where you go into holding phases. You don't have to be in a crazy surplus to build muscle. You really just have to be in a slight surplus and obviously maintain body fat levels. But then there's also, this rapid weight gain that people have, or this idea that they need to gain a bunch of weight that then they'll start building muscle. And I'm like, well, you don't have to be. Like, you don't need that. If your body can gain on the just slight surplus, then why do you need to eat more? Why do you need to push more? Just do your training stimulus better and you're going to build muscle. Sleep better, manage your stress levels, drink your water, do your cardio in off season, and I guarantee you're going to get better eventually. There's no magic formula. It's the basics that is key.
100%.
And once again, with obviously the recovery diet, it's all just reducing that stress bucket. I like to use this analogy a lot. Understand that through competing, you're going to build up all this stress, all this fatigue. Your hormones are going to be out of whack, and your body's not going to feel normal no matter how much weight you gain, no matter how much food you eat. You're not going to feel normal. I guarantee it right now. I'm going to tell you right now that it's going to take about 12 weeks, 3 months, 4 months even, to fully recover where you're not food focused. Your testosterone levels, your libido levels are back to normal. Your leptin and ghrelin are regulating well, and you're not so food focused or hungry all the time. Your body is reduced all this fatigue. And it's only then that you can truly start building muscle. The muscle you might gain in the next recovery phase is really just the muscle you already had. It's just inflating slightly because now you have a bit more glycogen, you have a bit more carbs, but you're still going to feel like shit. And so just remember that recovery is super important. And once you're out of that, that's when you can truly start to build muscle. So make sure you set the right timeline of when you want to do it, but focus on doing the quality at which you do things and improving on that. And I guarantee you go a lot further.
Yeah, 100%. That's why I like have not once said that like my current goal is to build as much muscle as I want, even though that's what I need to do. But right now I'm just focusing on recovering all those areas. I want to sleep well. I want to recover well. I want to feel less tired, less food focused, and less hungry. That's the main goal for now. And then only then my body will be primed to truly be able to put on more muscle. So and that may only be in January next year, So from now to then, I want to focus on feeling good, training well, but I'm not going to kid myself and, tell myself that I'm going to be adding pounds and pounds of muscle in this rebound phase in the next couple of weeks. I probably won't, but I'm focusing on really setting myself up for success. So by the time January comes, I will be ready to spend a whole year packing on as much size as I can.
Yeah, and you want to spend more time in the growth phase than having to do mini cuts to clean up your physique because you have overshot it and now you put on too much body fat. So one thing to note that, yes, you want to spend more time in the growth or holding phases, a lot more than, oh yeah, we have to mini cut now because you've shot it over and you've gained too much body fat. Now you're just wasting time because now you have to get leaner.
I don't want to mini cut
Yes.
What's
So
keeping me a little bit in check right now.
so a lot of growing, but I think that's it. I think we have wrapped up really well. We talked about your prep, we talked about the reverse, we talked about your results, and we talked about your mindset into your training and everything else that has gone in through to this prep. Once again, guys, if you have found some value from this podcast, please share it with your friends and family. If you do have any other questions or any topics that you want myself and Nicole to cover in our next podcast, please let us know, and we'll love to respond and make sure that we cover as much as we can. It can be repeat stuff that we have discussed, and we can reiterate things as well. But once again, guys, thank you for tuning in to our podcast, and we cannot wait to see you until our next one.